Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I had a subscriber ask a question which I will flip in right here, and it's an interesting question, totally different from anything I expected, but it lets me raise a couple of good points, so I'm going to work on it. Now, he basically wants to know, since the reverse grip bench press has its ability to help prevent injuries as far as the movement pattern goes, but itself is actually dangerous, couldn't you do it on a Smith machine to make it safe? So let me put on my +5 hat of weaponsmithing. Let's do a little crafting and let's talk about that for a minute. All right, here's the problem we have here, guys. You guys kind of see my response in there as far as the Smith machine itself goes. But to reiterate the point from the reverse grip bench press video, the reverse grip bench press, because of the way that it works, the rotators in the shoulder, and the bar path it takes is actually an extremely safe shoulder exercise that strengthens your shoulder joint. And is a fantastic upper chest and tricep builder beyond what a normal bench press is. The problem with it is that it's a dangerous exercise and that it is very, very easy to dump the bar and to drop a heavy weight on your chest and possibly even break your thumbs. If you're doing a full thumb over grip like you would normally do for safety, there's a good chance of injuring your thumb, straining one, breaking one on top of that, in addition to the bar hitting you in the chest. This is not a good situation to be in, and I'm someone who used to do this exercise very, very heavy, and I have also dropped 400 pounds on my chest while in a power rack with it, with only an extra inch of range of motion, before it hit the bars. So it only knocked me down a little, but it gave me one hell of a bruise. I'm not gonna lie, I had a bruise all the way across my chest from doing it. It was not pleasant, because that's the nature of the exercise. It's very easy to dump the weight on yourself. No matter how safe you're being with it. So he's like, well, couldn't you just do a Smith machine? Because then you can't really dump the weight because, it'll come down, be able to keep your arms under it, and you can't really dump it free fall. Well, the problem you run into is the same problem you always run into with a Smith machine. I hate Smith machines. I'm just going to be honest with you guys. And I know some bodybuilders are going to argue, well, there's certain exercises I can do on a Smith machine that are safer. Well, you might think they are, but they're not necessarily. They might actually be putting your joints at bad angles also, and you're damaging that joint over the years and you're not aware of it, and then 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, you've got a problem with joint inflammation, damaged cartilage, all sorts of stuff. The problem with a Smith machine is that it's based upon a kind of a false idea. It was done to try to be safe so that people could have something they could rack at any point, turn it over. It's locked in a rail, so it's impossible for the weight for you to fall forward, fall back, for a weight to tump out of a groove. It was originally designed for safety, and while that's a decent idea, it ignores human biomechanics. Most exercises that you do with a barbell or a dumbbell or anything else with a cable, it doesn't matter, guys. Your natural movement patterns for different exercises have arcs and curves in them. They are sometimes a S shape, they're sometimes an arc shape. They are very, very rarely in a straight line, your natural power curve. And the reason that's important is because things like a Smith machine can lock you into unnatural movement patterns. They can mess with your motor patterns. That can interfere with performance in a lot of ways. Maybe not such a big deal if you're trying to go purely for hypertrophy, but if you care about performance, you're locking yourself into unnatural movement patterns that your body is not going to do in the real world. That can impede some of your real world performance. And like I tell people, if you're going to put in the work and do an exercise and put in the workload, you might as well glean any extra benefits you're going to get out of it. It's like I tell guys, even if you're training purely for body composition, which, goal I don't always like, but I understand that for many of you that's your goal, and I can accept that fact. I'm not going to hate on you for it, but at the very least, get the extra benefits from it. There are extra benefits that come from various training. One of them is improved athletic performance, better movement patterns. You're losing a little bit of that sometimes with the Smith machine. And the other problem is those unnatural movement patterns can put your joints into positions to where they get damaged. They get certain shearing stress on them. It can, over time, again, wear down cartilage in joints. It can inflame connective tissue, inflame joints, because you were putting your body through a pattern those joints are not designed to go through. Every joint in your body has natural movement patterns. Some only have one, some have multiples based upon their design. But all of them have limitations, and they have ways that they are supposed to work and ways in which they are not supposed to work. Because the Smith machine locks you in, it can put them into ways they're not supposed to work. And it can even create muscle imbalances. Case in point, a lot of guys love to do the squats with them, and they'd say, well, it doesn't seem to injure my joints because I put my feet way out in front of me, right? And that's how they use the Smith machine to do squats. Like in that way it becomes more quad dominant. Yet if you guys remember that other video I did, I explained that actually doing these big compound movements to be more quad dominant is actually more likely to injure your knee joints over time and injure your knee joints when you're doing other activities. When you're running, when you get hit on a playing field in a sport, but particularly when you're running, sprinting, things like that, being excessively quad dominant for in the weight room is a bad thing. You would be better off if you did a normal squat to be less quad dominant and did more hamstring work and just used the normal squats and things to build your quads up, but to do a type of squat that makes you more quad dominant. And that might be the best way to do the Smith machine because it is a movement pattern that puts less side loading and everything on your joint. So it's less detrimental to your joints than doing a normal squat would be in that straight line. But at the expense of it puts you at risk of other types of injuries. Because again, why would you want to be quad dominant? That's the most easy way for sprinters, runners, various field athletes to get hurt. And you know what? You might need to run or sprint one day. And if you do and you're quad dominant, you're just at a higher chance of knee injury. You're also at a higher chance of injuring a hamstring. So you don't want to be quad dominant. If anything, you want to be posterior chain dominant if you want to have a lower chance of hurting yourself. So again, just doing it in that way can create muscle imbalances. And that's one of the problems we run into with the unnatural movement patterns that a Smith machine has, is that again, it could create muscle imbalances like that. That's one example. If you look at it really carefully with different exercises you might be doing on it, I'm sure you can find others. Even worse, people doing upright rows and stuff with it. Again, think about the damage that puts on your shoulder joint. The upright row can already be very harsh on your shoulder joints. Locking it into an unnatural movement pattern, even more so. Again, you can damage the glenoids and everything inside of your actual shoulder joint, which can be an injury that stays with you the rest of your life. So the Smith machine in general is a problem, particularly for some of these complex joints like the shoulders. Yeah, so you're running the risk of that when you do a reverse grip bench press with it as well. You're running the risk of putting joints into unnatural motions. You know, and if you're going to have to go through all of that, you're going to go through all that trouble to take an exercise like the reverse grip bench press, which is a good exercise. It's just dangerous. It's an amazing exercise if you never ever drop the bar and hurt yourself. If the bar never tumps, it is one of the best exercises ever invented. The problem is that there's a very high chance that you're eventually going to tump the bar on yourself. It's going to fall, it's going to hit you because of the way you're gripping it with the reverse grip. If that wasn't the case, it would be one of the greatest exercises of all time in terms of what it does for overall development, strength, injury prevention. You just get hurt. If you're going to go through all that trouble to do it, you're changing some of the benefits of the exercise anyway by doing that, because again, you're locking it back into a straight pattern. You're probably going to lose some of that upper chest development it gives you because again, it's going to change the arc. And it really just makes it less effective. And again, just the risk of damaging your joints now. It's kind of just silly at that point. You're better off at that point, if you're going to go through that trouble to use a Smith machine, to just find a different exercise. You know, there's just a certain point where you want to find a different exercise. And that's why I say even the reverse grip in general, it's a great exercise, but because of the dangers of it, there are just alternatives that can do the job better if you need them to. You know, just because they're safer, or different combinations of exercises to get all the same benefits. It's unfortunate because it was a fantastic exercise, but we just need to find safer ways to do it. The Smith machine, however, is not the safer way to do it. I honestly hate Smith machines, and again, I know some bodybuilders are going to argue with me on this. That's okay. You're entitled to your opinion. It doesn't make you a bad person. We can disagree on this without me saying, hey, you're stupid, you're a bad person, anything like that. It doesn't mean it that way. You happen to like the Smith machine. I happen to think the Smith machine is a total piece of garbage. And I think it should be melted down. Every Smith machine should be melted down for scrap metal, in my opinion, because I think they do more harm than good. I think they hurt people with very, very little benefits. There are very few exercises that the Smith machine you're going to really benefit from doing them on in comparison to the number that are going to potentially hurt you. So I'm just not a fan. It was a well-meaning intention when the guy designed it. You know, it was a good idea in the sense of, hey, why don't I try to create a way for someone to do barbell exercises safer? I think most of us agree that's a noble endeavor, but the end result is something that puts people into an unnatural movement pattern, and it causes, you know, long-term injuries over time. It causes damage to joints and connective tissue, and none of us need that. It's just not worth it. At a certain point, that's where I would say, look, if you just want to do a machine exercise There's hammer strength machines and stuff that at least have a natural movement pattern. I don't like machines, but if you're going to use a machine, find one that is at least designed around the normal kinetic patterns and movement patterns that the body moves these things through. Because some of them have actually made efforts to do that, and so I've got to give them credit where credit is due. Again, hammer strength tends to be pretty good about that. That's an example, but the Smith machines,